You know, before I get into the meat of this video, there's a few things that I want to say up front that will, of course, serve as the intro to this masterpiece. Now, it's customary, as y'all know, every week I produce a public video and then I produce one of my rabbit hole productions. As it is also a custom for those of you who have been following the rabbit hole productions, you know that whenever I have more to say, I will just produce another video. You also know that I reserve my trilogy videos for y'all special holidays. But this weekend, I have not done a trilogy, but I have produced two masterful productions in the whole. I'm not going to really tell y'all what the subjects are, but I think there are two videos that you need to see, particularly if you've been following this NFL protest. You need to see this one video. I'm not going to really go into detail, but I'm going to let you know that that's one of the productions that I produced. And again, as y'all know what it is, second nature, like breathing. You know, if you want it, send me an email. I'll send you the link. Now, in this video, you've seen the title. And let me outline this for y'all, because I think this needs to be done. And again, if you follow my videos, you know that I am a horror movie fanatic. I mean, I just really enjoy horror movies. I have a DVD collection of all the classics. It's something about horror movies. When I'm not watching my sports, when I'm not watching my politics, 9 chances out of 10, that's what I'm watching, a horror film, because I like them. And what I thought I would do, since this is October, and again, this is my favorite time of the year, simply because October, you see all of the horror movies being played, I thought I would take a horror movie theme and produce some of my delectable videos. Thus, you see the title of this video, The Invisible Man. And I'm going to explain to y'all who is the Invisible Man and why he's invisible. We're going to deal with that later on in the video. But this entire month, I'm going to take horror movies and I'm going to use the theme of that particular horror movie, and I'm going to tie it into one of my social commentaries. So stay tuned for that. We're kicking it off now with The Invisible Man. And again, as I said, as I get later into the video, I'm going to explain to y'all who is the invisible man and why he's invisible. But before we go there, and I've said this in many of my videos, I've documented this for y'all. I believe I have done videos on it. And that is what Margaret Zanger said about black clergy. I mean, it's really telling. I mean, when you look at Margaret Zanger's The Negro Project, and if you understand what the Negro Project was, I believe it was in 1939, I believe, don't quote me on that, it was in the 30s. And Margaret Zanger wanted to preach this ideology to black people, sterilization, eugenics, which again, if you follow my videos, y'all know that I am an advocate of eugenics, but you know I would have to definitely deal with that in the whole. And Margaret Zanger understood. This white woman understood. If I go to black people as a white female preaching eugenics, preaching sterilization, they're not going to trust me. They're not going to listen to me. we won't get anywhere. It's just not gonna happen. As a white female, it's just not gonna happen. I'm not gonna be able to preach eugenics in my quote unquote Negro project to the Negroes because I'm a white female. They're just not gonna buy it. They're gonna be suspect. So Margaret Zenger understood because she just like I understood this Negro. And since she understood the Negro and how he thinks, how he behaves, what he would do in any given situation, wherever y'all heard that before, since Margaret Zenger knew this about black folks, I would imagine she had y'all under the microscope. But again, we'll deal with that in another video. Margaret Zenger said, listen, they're not going to listen to me, but I'll tell you what we do. We got to find us some black clergy. If we find us some black preachers and we educate the black preacher, he by default will then take what we have taught him to the Negroes. And what we're talking about was eugenics, the Negro Project. Margaret Zenger said if we're going to preach this to the masses of black folks, it has to be done via that black pastor. She understood this. Most of these pro-blacks haven't gotten this yet. Most of these pro-blacks don't understand the level of power that this Negro has when it comes down to propaganda in the minds of black people. Margaret Zenger understood that. So therefore she said, listen, if we're going to preach eugenics to black folks, it has to be done via this black pastor, particularly one who has been taught in the social sciences, a well-articulate, well-dressed, presentable Negro. Margaret Zenger understood y'all. And that's the reason why she said, listen, if we're going to get this done, if we're going to preach this eugenics to black folks, and again, if you don't know what eugenics are and why I am a proponent of it, if you go do your research. And I think if you did your research and you follow my videos, you pretty much know why I say I am an advocate of eugenics and mandatory sterilization, but let me back up, because that's definitely has to be in the hole. So let's just scratch that off the record. That would have to be addressed in the hole. But this is what Margaret Zenger said, because she understood black folks. And I know y'all wondering, well, what does that got to do with the invisible man? So let me tell you. Now, again, if you look at the classic Invisible Man, the storyline consists of a doctor, Dr. Jack Griffin. And Dr. Jack Griffin was trying to come up with a new drug. And in the process of him trying to come up with a new drug, he stumbled across a potion that would make him invisible. And when Dr. Jack Griffin shared this with his fiancée and his understudy, or his mentor rather, the mentor and the fiancée began to understand that one of the side effects of Dr. Jack Griffin's potion was that he was going insane. So he would be invisible, but he was losing his mind. So this is what you had. And even though they understood he keeps taking this potion because he likes the fact that he's invisible, but at the same time, he's going crazy. And this is what you have with the whole storyline behind the Invisible Man. Yes, he was invisible, but he also was a nut. And a lot of y'all got figured this out. A lot of y'all done connected the dots, but we're going to keep going. So when I talk about the Invisible Man, who is he? Who is this Invisible Man? Who is the individual who when you look at him, when I'm talking about now, because obviously we know that I'm not talking about somebody who is literally invisible. What I'm talking about is their actions, their behavior, the things they do, the issues they promote, the causes they push. When you look at that individual's behavior, even though he is visible to the naked eye, his actions are invisible. Who am I talking about? Y'all know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the black pastor. He is the invisible man. And again, we ain't talking about invisible in the sense that we can't see him. We're talking about his actions being invisible. And why do I say the black pastor's actions are invisible? Nobody addresses them. And when I say nobody, obviously I do, and there's others who address it. So obviously I'm not talking about nobody. But in the context of your pro-blacks, all of these Negroes who are always talking about black folk, all of these Negroes who are always talking about the plight of black people, but they seem somehow, and it's very strange, it's kind of weird how the black pastor and his behavior, his chicanery, his skullduggery, his trickery is invisible. And the reason why it's invisible, again, nobody addresses it. It's as if it don't exist. That's the reason why I say he is the invisible man. And he has to be considered the invisible man because, number one, we know, now listen, Dr. Jack Griffin, he came up with the potion that would make him invisible, but the side effects of him taking that potion was he was losing his mind. What is a better attribute or a better description of the modern day mega black pastor than a nigga that's lost his mind? Excuse me, I think I'm in the hole. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Let me go back. What is a better depiction of the modern day mega pastor than an African American brother who's lost his mind? There is no better depiction of him. And so when you look at the pastor and his skullduggery and what he does, this is the reason why, and I say this. Let me go there. I ain't even planning to address this. I'm going to go get it because it hit me like an epiphany. This is the reason why when I look at these Negroes who support Donald Trump, these black pastors, and you'll notice and pay attention to this. What did Donald Trump do after he announced that he was running for president? What did he do? What was the second thing that he done? We all remember he came down, I'm running for president, blah, blah, blah. What was the second big thing that he did? You don't remember? I'll tell you. He met with black pastors. You remember all those black clergy come to Trump Tower to meet with Donald Trump? Now, let me say this. Donald Trump is not that intelligent to understand, like Margaret Zanger, that the way you get to this Negro is through this black pastor. Donald Trump is not that intelligent. Somebody in his campaign, I would say Bannon, but at that time Bannon wasn't around. I would say Kellyanne Conway, but at that time she wasn't around. But it was somebody else in that campaign who told him, listen, if you want inroads into the black community, you got to go through this pastor. That's just the same thing that Margaret Zanger said. If we're going to preach eugenics to these Negroes, we got to get us a black pastor. The black pastor will do it for us. We educate him, he's going to miseducate them. This is the process. This has been going on for years. This is the reason why I find it comical when you hear all of these pro-blacks who always talk about white supremacy, structure of white supremacy, ongoing legacy of slavery, the conditions of black people. Black people are in trouble. What's going on with black folks? But they seem to exclude him. He is never brought into the equation. You sit a group of Negroes down and have them talk about black people or the plight of black people and what's going on. They never seem to be able to address or bring the black pastor's role into the equation. Why is that? Rhetorical question. If you follow my videos, you know the answer. But this Negro is the invisible man. And this is what I say to those black pastors who, again, went and supported Trump, who's always talking about democratic policies, how democratic policies have created these inner cities, these ghettos, which they're right. But now what y'all also have to say is that the black church that sits in those inner cities is equally responsible. They don't want to go there. And when you look at one of the biggest minstrels, one of the biggest shines, one of the biggest clowns, a guy who was an FBI informant, a snitch. And remember now, y'all said, I ain't say this, y'all say that. Snitches gets stitches. That's what y'all say. You see any stitches on, and now listen, I'm not advocating violence, but I just don't see any stitches on Reverend Al. I just don't. And you can't get no bigger snitch. And, oh, I wish I was in the hole because I can parlay it into another word, but I'm not going to go there. Let's be politically correct. Scratch, scratch, scratch. You can't get no bigger snitch than Reverend Al Sharpton. A minstrel who have been robbing black people for years. A Negro who is a living representation of the invisible man. And again, I'm not talking about him, looking at him. Obviously, we know that he's not invisible. We're talking about his actions, what he has done. Him being a snitch, him buying cocaine. I mean, this is all documented, man. This is all documented stuff here. How he pimps black people. How he race baits and makes money off of the misery of black people. How this Negro has not showed up one time, not one time, have this minstrel showed up in Chicago. And his boy stays up there. He ain't been up there one time. But now you let a cop shoot a Negro in some backwards town somewhere. Here come Reverend Al. Here he come. Watch him. Set your watch to it. He makes money off of y'all's misery, and y'all cool with that. And why do I say y'all cool with that? Pay attention to the flyer. Look at the flyer. Look at it now. It's one of my productions. Not the entire thing now. It ain't all mine, but this is a literal flyer. This event is taking place Wednesday. Wednesday. But I want you to pay particular close attention to two people on this flyer. See, I told you I'll take it and just sit in your lap. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to just sit it in your lap. Once I sit it in your lap, you do with it what you want to do with it. I'm done. And the two people that I want you to pay particular close attention to is Angela Rye on the left and Simone Sanders on the right. Now, if you follow anything about the election, whether it's Fox News, Cable Negro News, MSNBC, ABC, any other networks, you've seen Simone, who was I think she was the secretary, or she had a high-ranking position with Bernie Sanders. And we know Angela Rye is one of these pro-black heifers who's always running around, and she's one of the ones everybody love. Angela, boy, she gets on those white people. She always talking about racism. Always talking about the structure of white supremacy. And we can conclude by listening to Angela Rye's rhetoric and Simone Sanders' rhetoric. And you can actually include Simone Biles, but again, that's a subject for another video. My mind's drifting. But Simone Sanders, you listen to what Simone Sanders said, you listen to what Angela Rye says, we can conclude, based upon what they say, they love black people. And why can we say that? Because they're always sticking up for black people. They're advocates of black people. They support Black Lives Matter. They're condemning the white racists. They're condemning structure of white supremacy. So by them and their rhetoric, we can conclude. Now, I ain't arguing whether they are or not, so don't come at me saying, well, they don't really love black people. Listen, I'm just saying what they say. I'm taking what they say at face value. That's what I'm doing in this video for just to make a point. So when you listen to their rhetoric, they love black people. Then you explain to me, since they love black people, and if you heard them, you know the things that they talk about, you know the things that they say. If they love black people as much as they project, how then do you explain them speaking at an event for Al Sharpton? Them willingly going to an all-day seminar on this minstrel to speak on his behalf, to heap praise upon this Negro's head, to applaud him buck dancing and stepping and fetching all these years. How do you explain this? If Angela Rye and Simone Sanders really love black people as much as they say, why are they defending Al Sharpton? Why are they speaking on the behalf of Al Sharpton? Now we know where Jesse at. That's why I ain't even mentioned that minstrel. And then the other, well, I think he's mixed. Mark Morial, he was the president of the Urban League. And then the other black female, I believe she's with ABC or MSNBC, I believe. But how do you explain this? How do you explain these two sisters who, when you listen to their rhetoric, obviously you would have to conclude they love black people, they respect black people, they're going to stick up for black people, they're going to defend black people, Black Lives Matter, fist in the air. How do you explain all of that and then them sitting on a panel with this buck dancing, stepping, fetching, minstrel ass Negro who was an FBI informant? How do you explain this? Yes, lest you start from the premise that Reverend Al Sharpton is the invisible man. Even though he is visible to the naked eye, his skullduggery, his chicanery, his snitching is invisible, obviously, to Angela and Simone because they speaking on a panel heaping praise on this minstrel's head. And then you're going to have some people who will come back to me and ask me, why do you say the black preacher is the invisible man? Look, what you want from me? I told you I'll sit it in your lap. I'll make it plain for you. That's all I can do. Now, what you do once I present it to you, that's up to you. That's up to you. I ain't got nothing to do with it once I tell you. Once I tell you, it is off of me. My responsibility is to tell you. And if you get mad, you get mad. If you like it, you like it. If you stop speaking to me, you stop speaking to me. If you no longer look at my productions, that's fine. My responsibility is to tell you. Once I tell you, it's off of me. You do with it what you want. And in the words of my father, it's your little red wagon. You can push it or pull it. That's up to you. There's no way around this. There's no way you can sit back and rationalize this. When you got these two women with all the things that they say, all the things that they have said on these networks, getting into it with Donald Trump supporters, getting into it with white racists, getting into it with white folks. All the things that they have said. On face value, you got to conclude they love black people. But then you find them on a panel speaking on behalf of a Negro who is a millionaire, who has lived a comfortable life, not working a day in his life. And when I hear people say this all the time, they shouldn't call Reverend Al Reverend. I never heard him preach. I hear the nigga preach. Oh, let me stop. Y'all see? Let me back up. Let me take a sip of this coffee. Got me like I'm in the hole. Back that up. People who say they never heard him preach. And I hear the brother, the African American, all the time preaching. And they say, well, what does he preach? He preaches the doctrine of victimology. That's what he preaches. It's no different than that buck dancing pastor who stands up on Sunday. Well, you know, this morning we going to preach from the Gospel of John. Turn in your Bibles to the Gospel of John, the 3rd chapter in the 5th verse. He's looking at the woman coming in the back door with that skirt on, but that's subject for another video. But this is the same thing Reverend Al does. He preaches the doctrine of victimology, man. And he does a good job at it because Negroes love to believe that they're victims. So he's preaching literally what they want to hear. He's preaching to the choir. But when you look at his behavior, when you look at his actions, when you look at the things that he's done, and it's not me, go look it up for yourself. Caught in an FBI sting trying to buy cocaine. And since you got caught in the sting, Reverend Al, what you gonna do? We want you to become a snitch. Okay, so now he's an FBI informant. He's a snitch. And y'all said snitches get stitches. And that's beyond the other things that he's done where he has pimped black people. He has stood atop the coffins of black men who have been shot by police, making money. This is what he's done. And y'all cool with that. And the reason why that is because Reverend Al Charlatan is the living embodiment of the invisible man. Now, if you want those 2 holes, you know what it is, second nature, like breathing, shoot me an email. I'll get you the link. At the end of the day.